My name is Jubin, and I know this is a really strange way to be sharing at a conference, but we're living in strange times, and therefore I guess this is the way. I wanted to start by telling you a story, and this happened to a friend of mine really. He has two sons. His older one was born with profound disabilities, and his younger son is the overachiever, the super friendly guy who has all of these friends. He's invited to every birthday party, that sort of guy. You know who I mean. And so this happened when I think their older son was about 12 years old or so. And so they received a birthday invitation, and his wife was looking at the birthday card and she started crying. And my friend wondered what had happened. And he looked at the card and he had tears as well. And he was talking about how that was the first invitation that they had received for their older son. Now, it's understandable because their older son has difficulties being in a crowd, he has difficulties with too much of sound and light, and he's non-verbal, therefore can have behavioral difficulties. So, not the easiest kid to have around when you're having a birthday party. But in the 12 years of his son's life, this was the first time that somebody had told that he matters and that they would create a space where he would be welcome with his brokenness, with his disability. And thinking about it, I realized that really is the gospel story, isn't it? That a space is created for us despite our brokenness, that there is room for us, that we are invited to the banquet. And I'm hoping that those of us who have not experienced this invitation or this love will do so during the conference. But for those of us who have known this love, who have experienced this love, that this conference will be a time where we are reminded afresh, really, about this love that has called us home. Because you see, it is this love that compels us to reach out to others who have never heard and experienced this love, and they get to see our good works and glorify God in heaven. It could be right where you are at in the communities that you live in, but it could also be in places where a lot of us are coming from, and as we share our stories, we hope that that's where God's love may compel you to go to as well. So when I first joined Herbertpur, there was a line I heard from one of the doctors, and I don't think I fully understood it then. In God's infinite kind wisdom, He didn't allow me at that point in time to know the whole truth, because I think if I had known, I'd probably run away. But the line that they shared was, the place God calls you is the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet. The place God calls you to is the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet. Just keep those lines in mind as I share a little bit more about what we do. So what do? We primarily work with people with disabilities and their families. And we do so to live out the truth that each person with disability is uniquely handcrafted by God, and that they are created to fulfill His purposes among His people. And why do we work with disability? There are a lot of statistics around. You can have a look at the screen, but the main thing is that people with disabilities are the largest minority group in the world. And the World Bank says that if you looked at 1 out of every 5 poorest people in the world, they would be a person with disability. And I think the thing that inspires us the most is people with disabilities are the largest unevangelized group in the world. I mean, how many organizations or people do you know who intentionally seek out those with cerebral palsy or those with intellectual disability, or those with hearing impairment, and share the gospel with them? Not too many people out there, but surely they need to hear as well, right? So a lot of our work is also inspired by the words of Jesus from Matthew chapter 10, verses 7 and 8. He basically says, Go to the sick and the dying, go to the marginalized, go to the forgotten, go to the ones who are banished from the society, go to the ones who are hidden because of their condition, because of the shame associated with their condition. So over the last number of years, we've had the opportunity to provide therapy and rehabilitation to children and adults with disabilities. We've had the opportunity to provide support and counseling for families. But I think the greatest privilege has been really to walk into their homes, share a meal with the family, become part of the family, stand with them in their joys and sorrows, because we've sat beside families as they waited outside the ICU. We've held their children as they have slipped the surly bonds of earth to touch the face of God. We have walked along with families as their child has learned to take their first step, or celebrated with them as their child got a distinction in class, or graduated from their 12th grade. In all of those, in this journey of sorrow and joy, one of the things that families ask us and their neighbors ask us is, why do you do this? I mean, when this child is better off dead than alive, why would you want to spend time with this child? Or why would you want to do all of these things you do with this child? A couple of years back, we had a wheelchair distribution here at Herbertpur, and there was a family that came. So this mother, a single mother from a Muslim background, she had brought her daughter across. The daughter was 11 when she had a spinal cord injury, and she had had a number of rehabilitation stuff done to her in that first year. But after that, she had basically been homebound, and so she was 17 when she came to us. So during those years, this was the first time that she was coming out of home. And so I think they traveled about 60, 70 kilometers to get to us. By the time she got to us, she had had a toileting accident. So when we were trying to help move her from her vehicle, the mother was in tears. This young girl, she was in tears because she had wet herself. We helped clean up and got her another set of clothes, and then they went in for their assessments. They got a wheelchair. The interesting thing was what the mother said at the end of it. She said, we could always have gotten a wheelchair anywhere else. It's possible to get wheelchairs. But it is the way you showed that my daughter matters, that regardless of all her difficulties, that you would be willing to sit by her and care for her. She said, only you Christians can do it. What is it about your God that makes you do these things? And to me, I think that's the holy ground where we can have these conversations where people have seen the good works, but they realize it's not of us or because of us, but that it points to the God in whose name we do these things. And it points to the God whose love compels us to do these things. So, the work that we do creates space for that. And in a lot of ways, I think it's because we show in the way we are with these families that the lives of their loved one matters. And in fact, what had happened was after the wheelchair distribution, suddenly the local churches had a lot more people with disabilities sort of ending up in their church. And the pastors were like, what's happening? But the thing was, they had seen what the God of Christians gets his people to do, and they wanted to know more about this God. And it was really like they realized that they were welcome, and that there was room for them at the table, and that in some ways that the body was incomplete without them being there. Like it says in the Luke 14 banquet, where it says, compel them to come in so that my house may be full. I think that's the image they get when we serve them. So in all of these stories, it's easy to romanticize the whole thing and to say that, oh, how amazing. But I also want to say that this work comes with a cost. It's not a sort of work where you can work for 2 years and say, okay, that's it, I'm gone. Nor is it the sort of work that is easy, where you see quick wins. You go in, fix something, and walk out. No, there is a cost, and you probably have more heartache and heartbreak. I mean, there have been times when we know some of our children where parents refused to bring them to the hospital and the child passed away because of seizures, or had pneumonia. Parents didn't want to bring them to the hospital and they died, and you stand at their funeral and you think, was it worth it? Was it worth the cost? But there's also the fact that, so remember the first line that I started with, where I said that place where your deepest gladness and the world's deepest hunger meet. So when I started out, I thought my place of deepest gladness would be the place where my skills were being used, where I could make a difference, that I was changing the world. It took a few years to realize that no, actually, the place of deepest gladness is when I don't know what to do, or I don't know how to help, or I can't fix the problem or the situation. But it's the place where all I can do is be present with the family and watch God do what only He can do. So I think the place of deepest gladness is when I've created the space where the Holy Spirit is able to work, and yeah, I accompany the family really, and we break bread together, and their eyes are opened to the truth. And I guess in a lot of ways that is my prayer for you as well, that God will lead you to places of deep hunger, because it is in these places where we realize all our training, all the skills we've accumulated, all our knowledge may help to a little bit, but can't do more than that. And it is in that place where we see God come in and God do what only He can do. And it becomes a place of deepest gladness for us, because we see Him at work and we say at the end of it all, it is not I but Christ. So that is my prayer for you. And yeah, thank you for letting me share my story.